The emergency beacon cut through the silence of deep space like a knife through flesh. Captain Marcus Chen had been running salvage operations in the Outer Rim for 12 years, but he'd never heard anything quite like this transmission. The signal wasn't coming from any human ship or station. The frequency was wrong, the modulation patterns alien, and underneath the static was something that sounded almost like crying. Marcus adjusted the controls on his small cargo vessel, the Wanderer, trying to clean up the signal. His ship wasn't much to look at: scarred hull plating, mismatched engine pods, and a cargo bay that smelled perpetually of engine oil and recycled air. But she was reliable, and more importantly, she was his. In a galaxy where humanity was still considered the newcomers, still fighting for respect among the established alien civilizations, independence meant everything. "Computer, can you isolate the source?" he asked, leaning forward in his pilot's chair. "Signal originates from asteroid field designated Kappa 77. Distance: 4.2 million kilometers. Warning: sector marked as contested territory by hegemony forces." Marcus grimaced. The hegemony was bad news, a coalition of older alien species that viewed humanity as an upstart race, barely worthy of basic trading rights. They controlled most of the valuable sectors in this part of the galaxy, and they weren't known for their hospitality toward human vessels found in their territory. But that signal, there was something about it that gnawed at him. In all his years running salvage, Marcus had developed an instinct for when someone was in real trouble. This wasn't a simple mechanical failure or navigation error. Someone was calling for help, and they were running out of time. "Set course for the asteroid field," he ordered, "and keep passive sensors only. I don't want to announce our arrival." The journey took 6 hours. Marcus spent most of it reviewing what little intelligence he had on hegemony operations in this sector. Officially, the asteroid field was supposed to be uninhabited, too unstable for mining operations, too remote for colonization. But as the Wanderer approached the edge of the field, Marcus could see that wasn't entirely true. Hidden among the larger asteroids was a structure that definitely hadn't formed naturally. It was geometric, all sharp angles and metallic surfaces, clearly artificial. More importantly, it was damaged. Burn marks scarred its hull, and atmosphere was venting from multiple breaches. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent. "Life signs?" Marcus asked, detecting 3 separate biological signatures. 2 appear to be in stasis or unconscious. 1 shows elevated stress indicators consistent with conscious awareness. Marcus maneuvered the Wanderer closer, using the asteroids as cover. As he got a better look at the structure, he realized it wasn't a space station, it was a ship, but unlike any design he'd ever seen. The architecture was elegant but alien, with flowing curves that seemed to twist in ways that hurt to look at directly. The emergency beacon was definitely coming from inside. Marcus had 2 choices. He could report the location to human authorities and let them handle it, the safe, smart choice that would keep him out of trouble with both human command and the hegemony. Or he could investigate personally, which would be incredibly dangerous but might save whoever was trapped inside. The decision was made for him when the signal suddenly changed. Instead of the steady emergency beacon, a new transmission came through. This time, the universal translator was able to process most of it. "Please, anyone. I am Princess Zarathul of the Celestial Court. My guards are dead. The hegemony soldiers. They took my ship. I am wounded and cannot reach the escape pods. If anyone receives this transmission." The voice was clearly female, speaking in accented but understandable Standard Galactic. More importantly, she was claiming to be royalty from the Celestial Court, one of the most powerful and mysterious alien civilizations in the known galaxy. The Celestial Court rarely interacted with other species, but when they did, it was usually as equals or superiors. If a Celestial Court princess was being held prisoner by hegemony forces, the political implications were staggering. Marcus made his decision. He couldn't walk away from someone calling for help, especially not someone who might be the key to changing humanity's status in galactic politics. "Computer, scan for hegemony vessels in the area. No active ships detected within sensor range. However, energy readings suggest automated defensive systems are still operational on the target vessel." That explained why the ship was still here instead of being towed to a hegemony facility. The automated defenses were keeping salvage crews away, but they were also preventing rescue operations. The princess was trapped in a ship that was slowly dying around her. Marcus began plotting an approach vector. The Wanderer was small enough to slip between the defensive sensor arrays if he was careful. His ship wasn't armed for combat, but he had tools that might be able to cut through the hull and extract a single passenger. As he worked, Marcus found himself thinking about what this rescue might mean. Humanity had been struggling for recognition in galactic society for decades. They were seen as primitive, violent, and untrustworthy, useful as manual laborers and soldiers, but not worthy of real respect. Saving a celestial court princess might change that perception dramatically, but that wasn't why he was doing this. Marcus had grown up on one of humanity's frontier colonies, where help was scarce and neighbors looked out for each other. The idea of leaving someone to die alone in the dark went against everything he'd been taught about what it meant to be human. The approach took 3 hours of careful maneuvering. Marcus had to thread the Wanderer through a maze of asteroids while avoiding detection by the damaged ship's automated systems. Twice he had to shut down all non-essential systems and drift, hiding among the space debris while sensor sweeps passed nearby. Finally, he reached what appeared to be the least damaged section of the alien vessel. The hull plating here was scorched but intact, and his sensors showed a pressurized compartment on the other side. Marcus deployed his cutting torch and began burning through the outer hull. The work was delicate and dangerous. Cut too fast, and he might trigger explosive decompression. Cut too slow, and the defensive systems might detect his energy signature. Marcus had performed dozens of salvage operations, but never under these conditions. After an hour of careful work, he finally broke through. Atmosphere rushed out of the breach, crystallizing instantly in the vacuum of space, but the pressure differential wasn't as severe as he'd expected. The compartment was already partially depressurized. Marcus suited up and crawled through the opening he'd created. The interior of the ship was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The walls seemed to pulse with their own inner light, and the corridors curved in impossible directions. The artificial gravity was failing, making movement disorienting and difficult. Following the emergency beacon's signal, Marcus made his way deeper into the ship. The signs of battle were everywhere, scorch marks on the walls, debris floating in the failing gravity. And twice he had to step over the bodies of what appeared to be the ship's crew. The aliens were tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and elaborate clothing that suggested wealth and status. Finally, Marcus reached what appeared to be a luxury cabin. The door was sealed, but his suit's tools made short work of the locking mechanism. Inside, he found her. Princess Zarathul was unlike any alien Marcus had ever encountered. She was humanoid but clearly not human, with the same pale blue skin as her dead crew members but features that were almost ethereally beautiful. Her hair was silver white and seemed to move with a life of its own, and her eyes were a deep purple that seemed to hold starlight. She was also clearly injured. Her elegant robes were torn and stained with what Marcus assumed was blood, and she was slumped against the far wall of the cabin, breathing in shallow, rapid gasps. When she saw Marcus enter, her hand moved weakly toward what appeared to be a weapon, but she lacked the strength to draw it. "Stay back," she whispered in Standard Galactic, her voice barely audible through Marcus's suit radio. "I will not be taken alive." Marcus raised his hands, showing he was unarmed. "I'm not with the hegemony," he said. "I received your distress signal. I'm here to help." Zarathul's eyes widened as she took in Marcus's appearance. "Human," she said, and there was surprise in her voice. "But humans do not travel in this sector. It is forbidden." "A lot of things are forbidden," Marcus replied. "That doesn't mean they shouldn't be done. Can you move? We need to get out of here before the hegemony comes back." The princess tried to stand but collapsed immediately. "My leg," she gasped. "It is broken, and I have lost much blood." Marcus quickly assessed her injuries. The break was clean but severe, and there was indeed significant blood loss from what appeared to be a laser wound in her side. She needed immediate medical attention, but more importantly, she needed to be moved to safety. "I'm going to carry you," Marcus said. "It's going to hurt, but it's the only way." Zarathul looked at him for a long moment, studying his face through his helmet visor. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why would a human risk himself for one of the Celestial Court? Our peoples have no alliance." Marcus thought about that as he prepared to lift her. "Because you asked for help," he said simply, "and because leaving you here to die would be wrong." Something shifted in the princess's expression at those words. She had spent her entire life surrounded by political calculations and strategic alliances. The idea that someone would risk themselves for a stranger, with no hope of reward or recognition, was completely foreign to her experience. "What is your name, human?" she asked as Marcus carefully lifted her in his arms. "Marcus Chen. And we really need to go now." The journey back to the Wanderer was a nightmare. Marcus had to carry an injured alien princess through a damaged ship while avoiding automated defense systems and trying not to worsen her injuries. Twice they had to hide while security drones swept the corridors, and once Marcus had to take a significant detour when they encountered a hull breach that was too dangerous to cross. By the time they reached Marcus's ship, Zarathul had lost consciousness from pain and blood loss. Marcus got her to his small medical bay and began emergency treatment using the automated systems. His ship's medical equipment wasn't designed for alien physiology, but the basic principles of trauma care seemed to translate well enough. As the Wanderer pulled away from the damaged celestial court vessel, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what he'd gotten himself into. He'd rescued an alien princess from hegemony captors, which made him a criminal in their eyes. He'd violated restricted space, which would anger human authorities. And he had no idea how the celestial court would react to a human showing up with one of their royalty. But looking at Zarathul lying unconscious in his medical bay, Marcus knew he'd made the right choice. Whatever consequences came next, he could live with them. He just hoped he'd live long enough to face them. Number the awakening. Princess Zarathul awoke to the unfamiliar hum of alien machinery and the scent of recycled air that carried hints of human occupation, metal lubricants, coffee, and something else she couldn't identify. For a moment, panic seized her as memories flooded back. The hegemony attack on her diplomatic vessel, the death of her guards, the long hours of imprisonment while waiting for either rescue or death. But this wasn't the sterile, hostile environment of a hegemony prison. The medical bay around her was cramped but functional, clearly designed for a single occupant. Everything was built to human proportions, smaller and more compact than the spacious chambers she was accustomed to aboard celestial court vessels. "You're awake." The voice belonged to the human who had rescued her, Marcus Chen. He stood in the doorway, holding what appeared to be a steaming cup of some dark liquid. "How do you feel?" Zarathul attempted to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through her injured leg and side, but it was manageable pain, not the agony she remembered from before losing consciousness. "Better," she admitted. "Your medical equipment is adequate." Marcus raised an eyebrow at her tone. "Adequate? It kept you alive, didn't it?" The princess felt heat rise in her cheeks. Among the celestial court, direct contradiction of royalty was unthinkable. But this human spoke to her as if she were just another person. It was simultaneously offensive and oddly refreshing. "Forgive me," she said carefully. "I did not mean to seem ungrateful. Your medical systems performed beyond expectations." "That's better," Marcus said, settling into a chair beside the medical bed. "Though you can skip the royal speak. We're not exactly following court protocol here." Zarathul studied him more carefully now that she was conscious and alert. Marcus Chen appeared to be in his 30s, with the weathered look of someone who spent his life in space. His dark hair was shot through with premature gray, and his brown eyes held a directness that was unsettling. Most beings who interacted with celestial court royalty did so with elaborate deference and careful indirection. "How long have I been unconscious?" she asked. "About 18 hours. Long enough for me to get us clear of hegemony space and find somewhere relatively safe to lay low." "Safe?" Zarathul looked around the small medical bay with new concern. "Where are we?" "Dead system, about 4 light years from where I found you. No colonies, no shipping lanes, no reason for anyone to look here. We should be able to stay hidden while you recover." The princess absorbed this information. "You could have taken me to a human facility. Surely the diplomatic value of rescuing celestial court royalty would have been significant for your people." Marcus sipped his drink coffee. Zarathul realized from the smell and shrugged. "Could have. Didn't seem like the right thing to do. You were hurt, maybe dying. Getting you to safety came first. And now? What do you intend to do with me?" "That's up to you. I can try to contact celestial court space and arrange for your pickup, or I can take you to human territory if you prefer. Either way, it's your choice." Zarathul stared at him. In her world, she was valuable property, a princess whose marriage could seal alliances, whose capture could be used for leverage, whose death might start wars. The idea that a stranger would rescue her and then simply ask what she wanted was completely outside her experience. "You truly expect nothing in return?" she asked. "I expect you to get better and go home safely." That's it. Before Zarathul could respond, an alarm began sounding throughout the ship. Marcus was on his feet instantly, his relaxed demeanor disappearing. "What is that?" the princess asked. "Proximity alert. Something just dropped out of hyperspace nearby." Marcus was already moving toward the bridge. "Stay here." But Zarathul had no intention of remaining helpless in the medical bay while unknown ships approached. Ignoring the pain in her leg, she managed to stand and follow Marcus to the ship's small bridge. The main display showed 3 contacts approaching their position, sleek, predatory shapes that she recognized immediately. "Hegemony hunters," she breathed. "They found us." Marcus was already powering up the Times Wanderer's Times engines. "How? We didn't leave a trail, and this system is completely isolated." Zarathul felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. "They must have placed a tracker on me during my captivity. I should have thought of that possibility." "Great. Any idea how to remove it?" "It would require surgical extraction, and we do not have time." The hegemony ships were moving fast, already closing the distance. "Marcus, you must leave me here and flee. They want me alive, but they will not hesitate to destroy your ship." Marcus looked at her as if she'd suggested he throw himself out an airlock. "Not happening. You do not understand. These are not ordinary hegemony forces. They are the personal hunters of Director Vexhal, and he has been seeking to capture me for months. My diplomatic immunity means nothing to him. Then we'll have to make sure he doesn't catch us." Marcus's hands flew over the controls, bringing weapon systems online and plotting escape vectors. Zarathul grabbed his arm. "Your ship cannot outrun hunter vessels. They are specifically designed for pursuit and capture." "Maybe not in a straight chase," Marcus agreed. "But I've been running cargo in contested space for 12 years. I know a few tricks they might not expect." The communication system crackled to life. "Human vessel. This is Commander Thek of the Hegemony Pursuit Force. You are harboring stolen Celestial Court property. Surrender Princess Zarathul immediately, and you will be permitted to depart unharmed." Marcus keyed the response channel. "This is Captain Chen, of the independent vessel Times Wanderer **. I have no idea what you're talking about. Scans indicate a Celestial Court life sign aboard your vessel. Do not attempt deception, human. We have tracked our quarry to your location. Still don't know what you mean. I'm just a salvage operator working this sector." There was a pause. Then Commander Thek's voice returned with unmistakable menace. "You have 30 seconds to comply, or we will board your vessel by force." Marcus cut the channel and looked at Zarathul. "Any chance they're bluffing about taking you alive?" "None. Director Vexhal needs me for his plans." "But Marcus, they will not extend the same protection to you." "Then I guess we'd better not get caught." The Times Wanderer Times suddenly lurched into motion, accelerating toward the system's asteroid belt at maximum speed. The hegemony hunters immediately gave chase, their superior engines allowing them to close the gap steadily. "What are you doing?" Zarathul asked, gripping the back of Marcus's chair as the ship shook under maximum acceleration. "Something stupid," Marcus replied grimly. "Or brilliant. Haven't decided which yet." The asteroid field loomed ahead, a maze of tumbling rocks ranging from pebbles to mountain-sized chunks of debris. Most pilots would consider flying through such a field at high speed to be suicidal. Marcus flew straight into it without slowing down. "This is madness," Zarathul said, watching huge asteroids flash past the viewports. "This is experience." Marcus corrected. "I've been mapping asteroid fields for years. The trick isn't to avoid the rocks, it's to make them work for you." The Times Wanderer Times twisted and rolled through the field, using its smaller size and superior maneuverability to navigate spaces too tight for the larger hegemony vessels. But the hunters were persistent, and their weapons had longer range. Energy beams lanced through space around them, several coming close enough to overload the Times Wanderer's Times shields. Marcus responded by flying even more aggressively, using the asteroids as cover and making wild course changes that threw off the hunters' targeting systems. "They're gaining," Zarathul observed, monitoring the tactical display. "I know. Time for Plan B." "What is Plan B?" Instead of answering, Marcus aimed the ship at the largest asteroid in the field, a massive chunk of rock and ice that was easily 10 kilometers across. As they approached, Zarathul realized it wasn't solid. The asteroid was honeycombed with natural caves and tunnels, probably carved out by centuries of ice sublimation and thermal cycles. "You're going to fly inside that thing?" she asked incredulously. "The hunters won't follow us in there. Too much risk of collision with the cave walls. Too much risk for us as well." But Marcus was already guiding the ship into one of the larger cave mouths. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for the Times Wanderer's Times hull, and it curved sharply after only a few hundred meters. Flying by instruments alone in the pitch darkness, Marcus followed the tunnel deeper into the asteroid. Behind them, the hegemony hunters held position outside the asteroid, unwilling to risk their larger ships in the confined space. Commander Thek's voice came over the radio again, filled with frustrated rage. "You cannot hide forever, human. We will wait for you to emerge." Marcus cut the power to everything except life support and emergency systems. In the complete darkness of the asteroid's interior, the Times Wanderer Times became effectively invisible to external sensors. "How long can we remain here?" Zarathul asked quietly. "Long enough," Marcus replied. "They can't wait forever. Eventually they'll have to report back to their superiors, and staying in one place too long makes them vulnerable to counterattack." They settled in to wait. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the quiet hum of life support systems and the occasional shift of the asteroid around them. Zarathul found herself studying Marcus as he monitored their systems and watched for any sign of pursuit. "Why did you really rescue me?" she asked finally. Marcus glanced at her. "I told you, you needed help. That cannot be the entire reason. Humans have a reputation for pragmatism, for calculating advantage in every situation. Rescuing me gains you nothing but trouble. Maybe that's not how all humans think, but it is how you have survived as a species in a galaxy full of more powerful civilizations. So why risk everything for someone you had never met?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. "My father was a colony engineer," he said finally. "When I was 12, our settlement was hit by a massive solar storm that knocked out most of our infrastructure. People were trapped in collapsed buildings, life support was failing, and rescue ships couldn't reach us for 3 days." Zarathul listened intently. "My dad organized the rescue efforts, even though he was injured himself. He kept saying that we look out for each other because that's what makes us human. Not our technology or our weapons or our politics, just the fact that when someone needs help, we help them." "And you believe this?" "I've seen it work. Not just in emergencies either. Humans might fight among themselves, but when push comes to shove, we protect the people who can't protect themselves." Zarathul absorbed this. The Celestial Court prided itself on elegance, wisdom, and cultural superiority. The idea that a species' greatest strength might be simple compassion was foreign to her experience. "The hegemony does not understand this about your people," she said. "They see humans as useful but crude, lacking in sophistication." "What do you see?" The question caught her off guard. What did she see when she looked at Marcus Chen? A crude salvage operator who lived in a ship that was barely spaceworthy? Or the person who had risked everything to save her life without expecting anything in return? "I see someone who is perhaps not as crude as I was taught to believe," she admitted. Outside their hiding place, the hegemony hunters finally departed, unable to justify remaining in position indefinitely. Marcus waited another 2 hours before powering up the ship and carefully navigating back out of the asteroid tunnel. "Where to now?" he asked, as they emerged into open space. Zarathul considered their options. Returning to Celestial Court space would mean safety for her but probable imprisonment or death for Marcus. The hegemony would paint him as a kidnapper or worse, and her people might not contradict that narrative if it served their diplomatic interests. But there was another possibility. "There is a neutral station in the Kepler system," she said. "Merchants and diplomats from all species use it for trade negotiations. If we could reach it safely, I could arrange for proper transportation home and ensure your safety." Marcus nodded. "Kepler system it is." As the Times Wanderer Times jumped to hyperspace, Zarathul found herself thinking about Marcus's words regarding human nature. Perhaps there was more to these newcomers than anyone realized, and perhaps it was time for the galaxy to learn what humans were really capable of when they chose to act with courage instead of calculation. The revelation. The Kepler station hung in space like a metallic flower, its multiple docking arms extending from a central hub that housed diplomatic facilities for dozens of different species. It was one of the few truly neutral locations in the galaxy, where ancient treaties and careful balances of power ensured that even sworn enemies could conduct business safely. Marcus guided the Time's Wanderer Times toward the human docking section, acutely aware of the attention their arrival was generating. Princess Zarathul stood beside him on the bridge, now wearing one of his spare jumpsuits since her royal robes had been ruined during her captivity. The utilitarian human clothing should have diminished her regal bearing, but somehow it only made her seem more remarkable. "Are you certain about this?" Marcus asked as they approached the docking ring. "Once we're aboard that station, word will spread fast about your rescue. The political implications will be significant," Zarathul finished. "But that is precisely why we must proceed. The galaxy needs to understand what happened here." The docking procedure was routine, but Marcus could see security vessels taking positions around the station. Word had already leaked that a celestial court princess was aboard a human salvage vessel, and everyone wanted to know how and why. They were met at the airlock by a delegation that included representatives from multiple species. Marcus recognized the human ambassador, Elena Vasquez, along with what appeared to be celestial court officials, hegemony diplomats, and several other alien dignitaries he couldn't identify. Ambassador Vasquez stepped forward first. "Captain Chen, I am Ambassador Vasquez. On behalf of the Human Colonial Authority, I want to thank you for your actions in rescuing Princess Zarathul." Before Marcus could respond, the hegemony representative interrupted. "Ambassador, this human is a criminal who violated our territorial sovereignty and interfered with a legitimate law enforcement operation." Zarathul's reaction was immediate and commanding. Despite wearing simple human clothing, her royal authority was unmistakable. As she addressed the hegemony diplomat, "Director Kethvar, I find your characterization of my imprisonment and torture as law enforcement to be deeply offensive." Her voice carried the weight of centuries of celestial court dominance. "Perhaps you would care to explain to this assembly why hegemony forces attacked a diplomatic vessel under royal seal." The hegemony director's scaled features flushed a darker shade of green. "Your Highness, you were traveling in restricted space without proper authorization. Standard procedure required detention and investigation." "Standard procedure," Zarathul said coldly, "does not include the execution of diplomatic staff or the interrogation of royal family members under pain of death. Unless, of course, the hegemony has officially abandoned its commitment to interspecies law." Marcus watched the exchange with fascination. This was his first glimpse of high-level galactic politics, and he was beginning to understand why humans struggled to gain respect in this environment. Every word was a calculated move in a complex game of power and prestige. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in a more private setting," suggested one of the celestial court officials. A tall being with the same pale blue skin as Zarathul but older and more elaborately dressed. "Your Highness, I am Ambassador Veltar, sent by the Crown Council to ensure your safe return." Marcus noticed the subtle emphasis on safe return and the way Ambassador Veltar's eyes lingered on him. The message was clear. The Celestial Court expected to take custody of their princess, and they weren't particularly concerned about what happened to the human who had rescued her. "Of course, Ambassador Veltar," Zarathul replied. "However, I insist that Captain Chen be included in all discussions. His testimony regarding my rescue and the hegemony's actions is crucial to understanding the full scope of what occurred." The request created visible tension among the assembled diplomats. Humans weren't typically included in high-level interspecies negotiations, and several of the alien representatives looked distinctly uncomfortable with the idea. "Your Highness," Ambassador Veltar said carefully, "while we appreciate the captain's assistance, surely his role in these events is peripheral to the larger diplomatic issues at stake." "On the contrary," Zarathul said firmly, "Captain Chen's actions demonstrate qualities that I believe the galactic community has consistently undervalued. His testimony is not peripheral, it is central to understanding why current diplomatic frameworks are failing." The group moved to a secure conference room deep within the station's diplomatic sector. Marcus found himself seated at a table with beings whose decisions affected the fate of entire star systems. It was both intimidating and surreal. Ambassador Vasquez began the formal proceedings. "Princess Zarathul, Would you please provide your account of the events leading to your rescue? Zarathul's testimony was precise and damning. She described how her diplomatic mission to negotiate mining rights in the outer systems had been interrupted by hegemony forces. Her ship had been fired upon without warning, her guards killed, and she had been taken prisoner aboard Director Vexhal's personal command vessel. Director Vexhal made it clear that my diplomatic immunity meant nothing to him, she continued. He intended to hold me until the Celestial Court agreed to his demands regarding territorial concessions in the Andromeda approach. Director Kethvar shifted uncomfortably. The Hegemony Council was not informed of any such operation. Director Vexhal was acting without authorization. Was he? Zarathul asked pointedly. Or was he simply implementing policies that the Hegemony Council preferred to maintain plausible deniability about? The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If true, it meant the hegemony was actively engaging in piracy and kidnapping to advance their territorial ambitions. How did you escape Director Vexhal's custody? Ambassador Veltar asked, steering the conversation away from the explosive allegations. I did not escape. I was rescued. Zarathul turned to Marcus. Captain Chen detected my distress signal while conducting salvage operations in the area. Despite the significant risk to himself and his vessel, he chose to investigate. Marcus found himself under the scrutiny of a dozen alien gazes. I heard someone calling for help, he said simply. What else was I supposed to do? You were supposed to report the situation to proper authorities, Director Kethvar said. Interference in hegemony operations is a serious crime. What operations? Marcus shot back. You just said Director Vexhal was acting without authorization. If he was a rogue agent, then I was helping capture a kidnapper, not interfering with legitimate law enforcement. The hegemony director's mouth worked silently for several seconds before he managed a response. The legal implications are complex. No, Marcus interrupted, his voice gaining strength. They're really not. Someone was in trouble. They asked for help. I helped them. Everything else is just political nonsense. Ambassador Veltar leaned forward. Captain Chen, while your intentions were admirable, you must understand that diplomatic rescues have far-reaching consequences. The Celestial Court is grateful for your assistance, but now we must handle the situation through proper channels. Marcus felt a chill as he recognized the dismissal in the ambassador's tone. They were going to thank him politely, and then make him disappear. Probably to avoid complicating their negotiations with the hegemony, but Zarathul had apparently reached the same conclusion. Ambassador Veltar, I believe you misunderstand the situation. Captain Chen's actions were not simply a fortunate accident. They represent a fundamental challenge to how our species interact with each other. Your Highness, for centuries, the established powers of the galaxy have maintained order through careful balances of threat and accommodation. We negotiate, we posture, we make calculated moves to advance our interests while avoiding open conflict. But in all our sophistication, we have forgotten something essential. Zarathul stood and moved to stand beside Marcus's chair. This human risked everything to save a complete stranger, because it was the right thing to do. Not because it would advance human interests. Not because he expected reward or recognition. Simply because someone needed help and he was capable of providing it. Princess, Ambassador Veltar said with barely concealed condescension. Humanitarian impulses are admirable, but galactic politics requires more nuanced thinking. Does it? Zarathul challenged. Director Vexhal was able to kidnap a royal princess precisely because he calculated that the political costs of retaliation would prevent an effective response. He was counting on our nuanced thinking to protect him from consequences. She gestured toward Marcus. This human destroyed those calculations by acting without regard for political consequences. He proved that sometimes the simplest response helping someone in need is also the most powerful. The room was silent as the assembled diplomats absorbed her words. Marcus could see them struggling with concepts that challenged everything they believed about how galactic civilization functioned. Finally, Ambassador Vasquez spoke. Your Highness, are you suggesting that humanity's approach to interspecies relations should be adopted more broadly? I am suggesting, Zarathul said carefully, that the current approach has created a system where criminals like Director Vexhal can operate with impunity. Perhaps it is time to consider alternatives. Director Kethvar made one last attempt to control the narrative. The hegemony regrets the unauthorized actions of Director Vexhal, We are prepared to offer appropriate compensation to the Celestial Court for any inconvenience caused. Inconvenience? Zarathul's voice could have frozen hydrogen. Director, my guards are dead. My ship was destroyed. I was tortured and held prisoner for days. And you call this an inconvenience? The silence that followed was deafening. Furthermore, Zarathul continued, Captain Chen's actions have revealed fundamental flaws in how we conduct interspecies relations. The Celestial Court will be proposing significant changes to current diplomatic protocols, including enhanced protections for humanitarian interventions and reduced penalties for actions taken in defense of innocent life. Ambassador Veltar looked alarmed. Your Highness, such proposals would require extensive consultation with the Crown Council. The Crown Council will support these proposals because I will personally advocate for them, Zarathul said with absolute authority. Captain Chen has shown us that there is another way to approach these problems. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to learn from human wisdom, instead of dismissing it. Marcus felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. What had started as a simple rescue operation was apparently about to reshape galactic diplomacy. The irony wasn't lost on him by refusing to engage in political calculations. He had triggered the biggest political upheaval in decades. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the observation deck of his newly upgraded ship courtesy of the Celestial Court's gratitude, watching Princess Zarathul's transport prepare for departure. Their time together was ending, but the consequences of their meeting were just beginning. The proposal passed the initial vote, Zarathul said, joining him at the viewport. 7 major species have agreed to support the humanitarian intervention protocols. And the hegemony? Director Vexhal is facing trial for piracy and kidnapping. The Hegemony Council has disavowed his actions and agreed to significant territorial concessions as compensation. Marcus nodded. Think it will make a difference? You already have, Zarathul said softly. When you chose to rescue a stranger instead of calculating the political consequences, you reminded us what we had lost in all our sophisticated maneuvering. The galaxy will not forget that lesson easily. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Finally, Zarathul spoke again. The Celestial Court has officially recognized humanity as a full diplomatic partner. You will have equal representation in the Galactic Council and full trading rights in all Celestial Court territories. Because I pulled one person out of a damaged ship? Because you proved that sometimes the most powerful diplomacy is simple decency. Zarathul turned to face him. Marcus Chen, you have done more to advance human standing in the galaxy than a century of negotiations could have accomplished. As her transport departed, Marcus reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. He'd set out to investigate a distress signal, and ended up changing the course of galactic history. But in the end, it all came back to the same simple principle his father had taught him years ago. When someone needs help, you help them. It was, Marcus realized, a very human way to look at the universe, and apparently, it was exactly what the universe needed.